Let's start with the series in the East, the final two teams there. Game one will be on Wednesday night. So when this episode drops, that same day will be game one between the Rangers and the Panthers. So let's go into this series. Who we got in this one? It should be a close one.
Okay, still muted.
I think it's definitely going to be a close one. I muted myself there because I'm clicking away to try to figure out one stat that I wanted to see, and that was hits. I think that this series is going to be determined in the first or second game based on if the Rangers are going to get into the shit with Florida. If they try to match Florida's intensity and not intensity, but physicality, I think that they're going to lose this series in a heartbeat. If they stick to their game and be a little more run and gun, then I think that they might be able to pull this off. They are the higher seed team. They're going to have home ice advantage. But I just think that Florida is just such a different weapon. You think that they're more of a defensive team. But really, when you look at when you watch them, they're just creating chances constantly through the physical play. The puck's in the corner. They crash and bang out to the slot, quick shot every single time. It's amazing to watch. And I wonder if the Rangers are going to be able to keep up with that. They haven't really faced a team like Florida yet. I think Carolina played a bit soft in that last series and, didn't give them a run for their money. So I'm interested to see the first and second game, how things go, but I'm going to pick Florida in 6.
Oh, in 6 games. Wow.
Damn.
Man, I had a really tough time with this series because I bet against both these teams in the past in my bracket. And it wasn't because I didn't think these teams were good. I just thought the teams that they were playing were better. So, he can't fault me for picking a Carolina over the New York Rangers. We all did. Carolina looked like a great team, but then, the Rangers just kind of bullied them. And Carolina isn't a tough team, I guess, but they're also not a weak team per se either. But then the Rangers just looked like the more physical and better team overall. So if they bring that to this series, and case good point, if they don't get dragged into the shit by the Panthers, because that's what the Panthers are going to want them to do. They're going to want them to get engaged in everything. If the Rangers just play strong and physical like they did last series, but also maintain their identity and score tons of good, hard, greasy hockey goals, then I like the Rangers in this series, and I picked them in 7. But like I said, right off the bat, this was a series that I had a lot of difficulty with because how can you bet against the Panthers? Like, this team is so good top to bottom, and they're more physical than pretty much every other team in the league too. So I had a really hard time, but I am going Rangers in 7 games. I just need them to score like they did last series. That's all.
Yeah, if I could I was so flustered there. If I could go back and clarify a couple things. The first thing is, if the point of not getting into the shit with Florida is that the Rangers power play is so strong and they have so many weapons that, like, Florida really actually hasn't taken that many penalties despite being gritty and frustrating to play against. So, if the Rangers stay away from that, keep Matt Rempe in the press box, then the power play is going to go to work and they're going to find a way to crack Bob. The reason I picked Florida in 6 is because I can't fathom a world that this goes to Game 7 in the Eastern Conference Finals and the Rangers lose in New York. So if the game goes to if the series goes to 7, I'm picking the Rangers. But I think that Florida's gonna go in there and playoff hockey their way to a win in 6.
Yeah, which is, when you say playoff hockey, that's murder on skates, basically.
Man,
just what they're planning to do.
Not just murder, which that is the intent for them, but the intensity and the clutchness. Not a word, maybe, but
I'll give it to you.
Just like Carter Verhaeghe, Matthew Tkachuk, those guys, you put them in a pressure situation, they're scoring in the playoffs. Carter Verhaeghe is like near the top of the list in game-winning goals all time in the playoffs already, and he's not even that old. And I just think when you match up clutch players on these two teams, Florida's going to take it. There are some clutch guys in New York, in particular, like, Kreider's pretty clutch in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Hate to admit it, but
how about a natural hat trick game 6 to win it against Carolina?
Yeah. So I just, when I match up, I give the nod to Florida. How about you, Harm?
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Let me just jump in on something you said too. Yeah. Like you called out Matt Rempe specifically, and I'm glad you did, because I feel the same way. I feel like that's a kid who doesn't need to be inserted into this right away. Maybe if you go down a couple games, you kind of break the glass in case of emergency and throw him into the lineup. And, that's only if you're getting bullied in those games or whatever. But I saw Sean Avery talking about this on Instagram today or yesterday, calling for Matt Rempe to be inserted into the lineup, because that's exactly what the Panthers are going to do. They're going to want to, just bully the Rangers in every chance that they get. But, as soon as I heard it, like you, Case, I was totally against that idea. I think the Rangers, to win this series, just need to play the way that they play. You mentioned that their special teams are good. They need to score on the power play. They need to be good at defending on the penalty kill. And if they just keep going in that way, I think they have a good chance.
Playing Matt Rempe right away, or I don't know, sending anyone, Trouba, whoever it's going to be, to try to start shit with Florida right away to set a tone, is just going to be pouring gasoline on fire.
Yeah. And you've already lost if that's what you're doing.
After that. Yeah.
Yeah, totally that can't be the main focus for sure. From the Rangers' standpoint, it's it's going to be a fantastic series. I think a lot of things stand out. These are two elite hockey teams. You've got a Panthers team that is back to the Final Four for the second straight season. And just like the Edmonton Oilers, second time in the last 3 years being in the conference finals, well, that's the case with the New York Rangers as well. And both teams have elite goaltending. I'm glad you guys mentioned the clutch scoring, Verhaeghe in particular on Florida, and then Kreider with the Rangers, obviously. And, as much as I want to pick Florida here, I do have to, stay honorable and true to what I picked in my bracket previously. I had the Carolina Hurricanes going to the Cup Finals, and so I will give the slight edge to the Rangers here, but it has to be in 7 games. They will have to get it done, going the distance and getting this done in 7 if they have any possibility of beating Florida and moving on to the Stanley Cup Finals. But if they can just not get dragged into the shit with the Panthers, like you mentioned, Case, it's going to really benefit the Rangers. And I just wonder too if some of the Rangers' top guys, whether it's Zibanejad or Trocheck, who I think honestly has maybe been their best centerman throughout the postseason so far. How will either of those guys match up against Barkov? Because when thinking about early, Conn Smythe Trophy votes and potential winners, I mean, if the Florida Panthers end up winning the Stanley Cup with the way that Barkov has played so far, he would have to be at the top of the list. So it's going to be interesting for sure. But I will say the Rangers get it done in 7. It's going to be a hell of a series, and I had a tough time with this one as well.
I've got a question to wrap up for both of you guys. If you had to pick one goalie in a Game 7, which one are you going with from this series, Bobrovsky or Shesterkin? One goalie, one game to win it all. Who are you picking?
That's tough because, if you ask me in a regular season game, who am I picking? It's 100% Shesterkin. But given some playoff history, I might go with Officer Bob here because he just seems to have a different gear every time he comes into the playoffs. Whereas, watching Shesterkin against the Devils last year, it kind of seemed like he didn't have that gear. And I don't know if he's been tested as much this year to be able to, if you're going recency bias, you got to pick Bob here.
Yeah. And speaking of being tested, like certainly not in the first round.
No.
Was Shesterkin
No,
tested,
that's more what I mean than anything.
Yeah, you're right. Both good, though, is why I asked. How about you?
As soon as you asked that question and before Case answered, I immediately thought of Bobrovsky, just with the experience, that veteran experience and everything. But Shesterkin is the real deal too, and that's another exciting aspect of this conference final in the East, is that you have two elite Russian goaltenders. We know one who will probably end up in the Hall of Fame, and Bobrovsky, and then I think Shesterkin is well on his way too in his young career. So that's another extra part in all of this. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, I would also go Bob, for the record, by the way.
Yeah.